My name is Viviana Alvarez. I am a third-year student here at Hampshire College studying education and psychology. I'm also a signer for the first-generation college student group, which is called First Scholars.
And I'm here, and I thought this was an important topic because it feels to me that there's first-generation college students have been, they're not a necessarily noticeable group. They're not an identified group. But yet, in our meetings and our conversations, we hear about the different things that students are interested in that are connected to being first-gen students or the struggles that they're having as students who are new to college without the resources that many of our other students have. This is also something that's, for me, very personal. I'm a first-generation college student. Neither of my parents went to beyond high school, and I'm the only one in my immediate family to have a bachelor's still. So actually my nieces and my nephews are all getting to college. So that's good. But yet, you know, there's a lot of privileges that allowed me to be that person in my family to do that. So I have some pieces that I can very much relate to a lot of the current research and thinking about this, and some of the my own struggles with confidence in different areas that I think come from long ago and continue, that are related to being a person without real clear understanding of how to navigate college systems. So this is also something for me that's very important to help my colleagues think through how to better support students to get through successfully and in a really empowered way.
I'm sorry, I was a little nervous at the beginning. I forgot to tell my part. So both of my parents migrated here. My dad is from Mexico and my mom is from Hong Kong before it became a part of China, and neither one of them had gone to college. I am the eldest of two, and my sister's currently going through the college process, so I feel like I'm reliving it myself, trying to help her navigate that. I guess I first decided to really go to college because I never had a college-going identity until I had decided that for myself in the 11th grade, which is when I was like, I found Hampshire, and I decided this was the only school for me. And if I didn't get in, I was like, I don't know if I would survive state school. So I had this, this vision of I was going to make it because my leadership in high school was very strong. I was a really strong member of my community. We were all first-generation Americans. It was really great to have like this sense of we were all going through this together. And we found strengths in ourselves that our parents couldn't offer us. And we also went to a college prep school where we only had one guidance counselor for about 67 of us, helping us through the college process. But we never had a counselor to talk about, the emotional state of tying what was going on at home to how that was affecting us in the classroom. So I got to Hampshire, and I went through my first year not identifying as a first-generation college student, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know that was a thing. And it wasn't until my second year when I took a course with Kristen and Karina Fernandez about college access and college awareness that I had decided that I had brought myself to where I am now and endured a lot of challenges and got through a lot of obstacles to get myself where I am now. But wouldn't it be so great if first-gen students could spend the time on, trying to get to the pace where everyone else is, that they just kind of came to college, to Hampshire with? If we had spent that time like finding more interests or diving deeper into our interests, because it's not just about navigating the academics of it, but it's also navigating Hampshire as an institution on its own, which is really different from other schools. So even though we may be talking to other first-gen students at other schools, the experiences are very different. So I talked to Kristen, and we found out that this was a common, subject area that we wanted to really dive into, and created the student group with two other first-gen students, which is going really great, and we're now working on this.
So Viviana's the driver of this whole thing, I have to say. So next, and the whole thing is, we'll talk a little bit about, but it's a first-generation initiative. So we're Viviana kind of got the student group up and going with signers and is doing really good work with that. And she and I have been able to pull together folks in different offices to figure out how, when Viviana's not here anymore, there's actually a structure that supports a first generation initiative. And so that we're thinking as a college about how do we prepare the conditions for first generation students who will be coming more and more to campus. How do we make sure it's a place where they thrive? So because there's only like 6 of us, 8 of us, I'll kind of go through here, but we'll certainly deviate and have more of a discussion. And I just want to say, by the way, this is just utterly exciting to me because, again, while students, you mentioned kind of it's a hidden, quiet, kind of for whatever reason, students may not be talking about it. It's also very hidden and quiet among faculty. I've been working with Melissa for what, how many years? 10 years, like on committees, everything. Never knew that about you, right? So, how do we identify ourselves and share experiences and think through and bring in allies like Sue to say, like, help us when we need it, right? So we just want to talk a little bit about how First Gen is defined, which is kind of more policy piece, but also then identity as First Gen. Talk a little bit about First Scholars at Hampshire, what's happening at Hampshire. Spend a little bit of time, because First Gen students are often perceived as needing support, right? And indeed, they do, right? But what is often left out of the discussion is what is it that First Gen students add to Hampshire? What do they contribute? What do they contribute to their own educations? And why is making sure that we're bringing in more first generation students a really valuable and important goal? Common areas of challenge where support is needed. We've made a bunch of scenarios that we thought, but I think we'll kind of talk through them together. And then we identified some best practices, but I think we can come out from this discussion generating best practices. And my hope is to take the ideas that come from our discussion, add them to what Viviana and I have named, and then make sure that both the video and this listing is available on the Center for Teaching and Learning website. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Great. So we're going to go over First Gen as an identity. So some definitions that we have found that are commonly associated with being First Gen is parents had at most a high school degree but no college. Parents had some college but no degree. Parents had at most a 2-year but not a 4-year degree. So with this, we were also talking about how the First Scholars student group here identify as First Gen. We noticed when trying to reach out to students, asking people if they identified as First Gen was sometimes misinterpreted, and well, I don't know if I'm First Gen was usually the response that we got. And so we made it open-ended. What does it mean to be First Gen to you? And what we had came up with together was that First Gen as the identity itself was being defined as the obstacles that we go through and not like the parental situation that was going on, because situations really do vary from case to case. So for example, a parent who does have a degree may not be the parent that has influence within the student's life. Or another example would be an older sibling having gone to college, but the student may not talk to this sibling anymore. So we really define it by mentorship and association to people who can provide a college-going identity before or during the process of being in college.
Yeah. It's very confusing. So I mean, it's just something for me, it's confusing and complicated because the statistics we're getting about who our First Gen students are following the bottom discussion. But yet, I would hazard to guess the students who are actually would fit into the definition that Viviana is suggesting. It's a much broader group of students who need some, net in some way. Okay, so just as I always like to say, so why are we talking about this? One clear way for me to think about it is, so the percent of kindergarten students in 2010, this is the educational background of their parents. So you'll see that a great great many. So if you go by the definition of one or more parents, so having a baccalaureate degree, you have what, 30, 32, 21, that's what, 53, and 10, 63% of students coming down the pike who have the potential to go to college are first-generation students by that definition, right? So it's a good number of students that will be coming to us, hopefully coming to us, right? That's not, I was trying to get some information on who is coming to college, who is a first-generation student. Does that make sense? And one of the studies I looked at, which seemed pretty consistent, or at least it cited an awful lot, was from 2011, and it's about 1 in every 5 students entering college is a first-generation student, first-generation college student. Okay, so some general kind of wide characteristics, and as Viviana said, who first-generation students are, their circumstances are very diverse, right? And so, but generally some things we can say is that those who tend to enroll in college and graduate do so at a much lower rate than students who come from a family where parents have some kind of bachelor's degree. First-generation college students are more likely to be low income, to be students from a racial or ethnic minority, to not have English as their dominant language, or speak English as a second language, live at home or off campus. This is one thing you should also be clear about is the majority of first-gen students tend to be more in state universities, community college settings. So even thinking about how does this apply to a liberal arts setting is interesting. And more likely to work full-time. I think Neil Steeling's comment the other day at the faculty meeting about he's seeing more and more students coming to him who are doing their Div 3 and also working full-time. This has been I've noticed this for a few years. I'm sure it's going to continue for us, that this is first-gen students coming to us and they're working. They're trying to support themselves, their families, be here. So working full-time is a piece of that. Take fewer courses or credits per semester. In Hampshire, some kind of, do you want to take this?
Sure. So about last year was the first year that admissions had recorded in record the number or the percentage of students that were coming in who were first-generation college students, and that is determined by the FAFSA when they ask what the education of your parents are. So the options are some college, no college, high school. And we recorded that 13% of the 2014 fall first-year class is our first-generation college students. And we also have the James Baldwin Scholars Program, which is led by Karina Fernandez. And that really brings in students who all identify as first-generation college students. And there is a lot of support that goes into making sure that those students not only get through the college experience here at Hampshire, but also provide resources to continue their success beyond Hampshire. There's a couple. I think they meet weekly. It's a really tight-knit community that really allows you to find people who can connect and relate to you, and in that build a really strong sense of not only are you going to get through this, but we're all going to get through this together. So that's really great stuff. The next piece to it is the first-generation college student group, which is we identify as, or our group is titled First Scholars. And what we do in that group is primarily to support each other through the obstacles that we're going. We've had 2 meetings so far. It's been really great because I wrote up a lot of topics that we could potentially discuss in the student group, and it was in both meetings, it was really great for students to just be like, oh my gosh, you go through that too, and to have have that sense of, like connection to people that we've only seen around campus, but we've never interacted with. Some of the topics we discuss are things lost in translations when we're talking to people, or whether it be family and we're trying to talk about what's going on here at Hampshire, or talking to friends about, or friends talking to us about, certain things that we haven't really gotten a grasp of, or vice versa. Familial obligations, acknowledging intersectionality. I wrote societal pressures, so expectations not only that we have for ourselves, but what is expected of us from our professors, our family, our peers. How to find resources and mentorship, and microaggressions. So those are just some of the topics that we go through. But we also like to do, outings into the into like Amherst, like outside of Hampshire, to get out of this little bubble that we have going on, and not only finding a way to support each other through talking about our challenges, but also building community with doing like really great fun stuff together. Then we got the First Generation Initiative, which is a board of people. We've got, I don't know if I can do all the names, but I know we have someone from admissions from the Cultural Center, the director of the James Baldwin Scholars. I'm sure I'm missing
Career options.
a number of people, yeah. And we come together and we talk about where it is that we want this this initiative to go and what's going to be a part of it. How can Hampshire as an institution support first-gen students and the retention of first-gen students?
Yeah. I think, it's in its infancy, so a part of it is thinking about, one of Viviana's ideas is how do we do a campaign where faculty may choose to identify themselves, so students also may choose to identify themselves. So there's a not a media campaign, like, you know what I'm saying?
Awareness.
Like an awareness campaign, thank you. And also just kind of harnessing a lot of the programming that is already happening and bringing it together so that it's, that first-gen students are more aware as a body, as a group, as a community, of the kinds of resources and programming that currently exist, but then also to develop further programming. This was the idea to go beyond the deficit model, go beyond a model where we're just thinking about, what's the remediation, what's the support that people need as they enter into college, but rather thinking about, what kinds of capital, what kinds of resources, knowledge, and skills do folks have when they are coming to college. And this model is pulled from a piece by Tara Yoso, who talks about community cultural wealth. And one of the things that she talks about is aspirational capital. And she's talking primarily here about communities of color, but particularly, I think, I'm looking at you like you might know this piece better.
That's a great article.
Right, so, but is she talking more about Latino family communities? Okay. So kind of the notion of aspirational capital that while families may not be able to support, or communities may not be able to support students with financial resources necessarily, or help fill out a FAFSA, or help, can you edit my paper and see if I'm making a good argument type of resource. They do and are very supportive and provide resources and skills and ways of thinking about what is possible, right? And instilling in students a sense of this is possible for you. You can do this, right? Navigational capital. So generally having a variety of experiences navigating and maneuvering through a number of institutions. For some students, it's that they are the key person navigating through their high school process, their college process. It might be through social service process, healthcare, right? Some students may be translators for their family primarily, or the primary translators for their family, whether it's by language or by cultural capital. So students are coming to us often with experience having navigated a number of institutions. So
Paying the bills and just like all that.
Yeah. Yeah, paying the bills. Yep, absolutely. and I put down, just as a heads up, put down that these are important to make acknowledge as faculty, as advisors, and to try and understand what are the skills and knowledge that students are bringing to us, and to help make them visible, because I think that often when students enter into this setting, this Hampshire setting, and are feeling kind of without, like they don't have a compass, that they tend to forget that they're bringing all of these types of skills and knowledges to college with them. Linguistic resources, so several students are very skilled and already kind of, you had talked about translation, both in terms of a particular language and being bilingual or trilingual, but also in terms of code switching, going from different kind of communities and speaking across communities. Family and community resources, so, family and community resources. So what are the ways, the stories, the testimonies that families talk about and pass down to their children that kind of bring them forward, give them hope, provide them resources. Resisting capital. So, I mean, one of the ways I think about this is that when I'm reading about first-generation college students, one of the things I'm reading about, and you may all have felt, right, is that when something, when there's a challenge to your work, right, it's all of a sudden like, oh my God, I'm not good enough, I shouldn't be here, right? And so kind of having and remembering that there's been many times when there's been messages or efforts to kind of stop students or tell them they shouldn't be where they are. And I think I'm bringing this specifically to students. And then resisting and going through and pushing through. Do you want to add anything?
I think it'll go to this.
Okay.
Great. So this is a list that the first scholars we came up with together at our last week meeting. And, we sat down and I asked the question, as first gen, we need a lot of support in certain places, but what do we have to offer? So what makes being a first generation college student a positive thing? And at first it was, honestly, we kind of sat there and just looked at each other and had to give each other a couple of examples to get this thing going. But once we started, they were speaking faster than my pencil was writing. So just a couple of things to highlight. I'll go through the list. We are experienced problem solvers. We know how to get ourselves out of difficult situations. And if some of these aren't clear, please feel free to ask a little more about them. We have self-motivation. We persevere. We don't procrastinate because we know it's going to take us twice as long to get through something, so we work our schedules out to fit our academic needs. And what I mean by that is a lot of us had expressed that sometimes readings can take a lot longer for us as compared to our peers because there's a lot of vocabulary that we may not be familiar with. So we'll take the time to pull up the Merriam-Webster dictionary or whatever it is that we need in order to better understand that word so we can understand the context in which it is being used. We do well at finding different methods of learning. We've got strong work ethics. We work hard and diligently. We are observant. We examine and pick up subtle cues in various situations. We know how to develop critical questions. We know how to dissect complex ideas and get at roots. We know how to ask for help when we need it. We are open-minded and curious. We bring cultural wealth back to our families. Going a little more in depth about being open-minded and curious, a lot of us were talking about how sometimes we question things so much because we don't understand it that it almost seems like we're trying, not that we're trying to get, like every single piece of it, but that's what we need. Like in order to understand something, we want to view it at every angle and like really dissect it as much as possible. And sometimes it can come off as a little, like we're asking a little too many questions, but it's just so that we can really get to its roots and consider all the ways to, I guess not interact, but to take what it is that we're trying to get out of this piece of, for example, we're reading. We bring Right, I think I said that. Cultural wealth back to our families. We bring cultural capital to Hampshire. We build strong communities. We plant seeds of knowledge in our communities. We are resilient. And just a little more on that. We're not only in college, to benefit us, to get ourselves an education so that we can live a better life. It's more, I think personally, like having my mom having come to the U.S. so that I could go to college is a really big motivator for me. I'm not only striving for a better future for myself, but so that my mom can see that, like everything all the sacrifices she had made were for a reason. And I think it ties back into that familial piece. We bring positive change to our lives and the lives of people around us. A lot of the students in the group were talking about how their parents, one student was talking about how her parent had decided to go back to community college to take a course. And, they had that moment of like, well, I see what you're doing. You're trying to talk to me about what you're doing. And I want to do that too. I want to get an education for myself too. So that was really touching. Our experiences help others see different points of view and understand issues of access with more empathy. We value education. We know the reality is it is more a privilege than a right. What I mean by this is our parents, of course, varying situations, didn't have that privilege of pursuing higher education. For them, it was a lot about getting into that work field and really supporting your family so that we could go to college. So a lot of it is access to, and it's a question of, I guess not so which it's more so like a question of like which college are you going to go to, because like I guess for me it was like my parents really just wanted to leave that up to me, but there was also this like undertone of like I really want you to go so that you can have a better future. So it's access in regards to like going out there and getting the best for us, but not necessarily knowing what it is that may be the best for us at that time, if that makes sense. We don't assume higher education is a rite of passage, and I was going to say last but not least, this is definitely not the last, but the last on this list is our experiences and contributions provide discussions with a fresh perspective. So,
Yeah, that's great.
It's really fabulous.
thank you. It was a lot of fun writing this, putting this together.
The little notes you all got on your in your boxes were also a product of this meeting. The scenarios were also a product of this meeting. So this group really helped inform this session. Common areas of challenge. So what are the things that, from the literature, from experience, that we know are kind of trouble spots? So the idea of thinking about what's education for, right? And so having an understanding that when students come to us, they might be thinking, like, what am I going to do with this? What's the career? Where am I getting, where's this taking me? And trying to understand, what we all have people trying to think about what is a concentration, right? But if there's a piece of it that is about, and then what do I do with this? It might end up kind of pushing out some options. So, an example is used in the literature I was reading. Why would I take a philosophy course? I have no understanding of what that would do for me, right? So how is that going to help me get to where I want to be? So being prepared to talk with students about the both where they're going, but also why, the life of the mind. Why is that also kind of very significant? Explicit and implicit rules or expectations for assignments. I think this is particularly a difficult issue at Hampshire, and across the faculty, we all have very different ways of doing things. That alone is really difficult, right? That a lot of our processes are not necessarily written down in clear ways, right? And so someone was saying, a student I was in a meeting today said, okay, we've submitted the Div 2 faculty request form. now are we supposed to contact faculty? Are they going to contact us? Like what? Oh, I'm not sure what to do. Am I going to get a chair if I don't contact them? Like, so there's just a very, sense of like, am I doing the right thing, right? And I think that happens at the level of getting through the college process here at Hampshire. But it's also, I may be preaching to the choir here, but the idea of like when you are talking in your classroom about what's a good paper? What does it look like? What do you expect in it? Is it listed in your syllabus, kind of real important things that you must have in your paper in order for you to be saying, wow, Viviana, that's amazing, right? Are you talking about what your feedback means, right? So in the sense that I'll tell my students, no matter what you hand me, I'm going to tell you it's great here and here and here, but I also, no matter where you are, my job is always to provide you feedback, and your paper's going to be marked all over the place, no matter what, because I learned that I never used to say that, and students would freak out when they'd get a paper back, and some would not want to continue, right? Because it's not, it's critical feedback. It's not, woohoo, Viviana, great job, right? So kind of talking through the things that are, who said it? I'm not sure, the hidden curriculum of the college, right? The hidden culture of the college. So for around assignments. I also think that's some of the difficulty is engaging in discussion, engaging in classroom discussion particularly. And how do you enter into that? What is a thoughtful kind of question? Can students even ask questions? One of the things that came out of one of the studies is that the idea of questioning, particularly in the sciences, questioning the author, the researcher, like how would I know this? Like who am I as a first-year student going to be able to take up and take apart and think through and critique this person who published a paper, right, about it? So the sense of like, how do I ask good questions, both in a classroom and what right do I have to ask questions? How do we use office hours, right? How do we engage students and tell them and teach them about what could happen in office hours and why they should go? Boundaries, professional student. Forms of address is one thing. Should I be called Professor Lucian? Should I be called Kristen? When you write me an email, I'd appreciate if you said, hello, Kristen, or sign your name, right? Things like that. So kind of what are professional etiquette or student etiquette, I should say. But also then what are the boundaries? Like when do you get to see me outside of the classroom? When don't you? When do I get to contact you outside of the classroom? When don't I, right? So kind of being really clear with our expectations and what we expect. Family, school commitments. You brought that up before, but often kind of being really alert to and aware of and thinking through with students about the pulls that they have between being there for their families and being present for their academics. Persistence in the face of academic challenge. I already mentioned that there's some evidence that kind of early feedback that is not necessarily like, here are the great things you did, and also that can really kind of jar students, especially for students that are coming from places that they are really kind of quite the stars in their schools, and then they're coming to Hampshire, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, am I behind here? Like, I thought I knew what I was doing. Does that sound familiar? Very. Encountering and combating microaggressions. So, for first-year students around class, around race, around language, right? So constant hearing messages every day that are suggesting that you that you are not enough, that you are not right, that you don't belong here, right? Being the object versus the subject of study. I'll say that a student that I worked with over time here, but the first year I didn't think she was ever going to come back and see me because she took a class with me, the American School, and I had students do a digital story about coming to college. And we were reading all this material about kind of how schools and inequality in schools, and she said, I never realized I was working class until I came here. I didn't know what that meant. And she suddenly kind of saw herself in this discussion as now it was her that we were discussing, and she was removed from the discussion, having to talk about her community, and so being an object of the classroom discussion versus a subject of the classroom discussion, or being a subject who could kind of enter in. But at that point, she didn't even feel comfortable to enter in. Role of experience and purpose. So what we're learning? Why are we learning this? What's the point, right? And family identity shifts. So you had talked about kind of straddling, and you actually too, Michelle, talked a little bit about straddling, your home culture and your school culture, and how do you do that? And for many of us, that's always a very interesting, complex piece for different reasons.